And then once again, I would like to thank you for joining us for the Primary Sources in Teaching Online webinar series. Again, this is brought to you by the TPS Western Region in partnership with the TPS Teachers Network. In this next session, we're going to continue our presentation with Kelli with Teaching Elementary Online with Digital Primary Sources. And this time we're going to take a little bit more of a focus on strategies and resources for that elementary classroom. I'll hand it back over to you, Kelli, so you can continue.
All right. I'm going to go back to sharing my screen here. All right. So again, nice to be with you. I am just going to minimize that. Thank you. And here we are. And if you're still here, this is the link you can also go to receive your certificate. So this one, we're looking at, again, ways we can curate pieces to then use with our students. And as I mentioned in the first, I'm skipping through those, session, the Library of Congress has so many fantastic resources. The challenge is making sure they're appropriate for our student age groups. And so one tool that I fell in love with is the actual TPS Teachers Network. And so I'm going to take you into this tool and talk a little bit about how I've used it. I know there's already been webinars on how to use it in the sense of creating albums and things like that. So some of this may be a little bit repetitive, but it shouldn't be much at all because I'm going to talk about how I use it. So one thing is really nice. The TPS Teachers Network is free. And so it's just simply registering, signing up. Again, one of the great tools you can use is the search feature. So if you're brand new to the TPS Teachers Network and haven't created anything, maybe you don't know how to create your own album, then it's a great tool to kind of search and look for particular things. So I'm going to try forces again. And I actually haven't searched this yet, but I want to kind of go here and take a look. And so when I searched, I had a choice of grabbing some from the box there, but then all of these are items that come up with forces. Now you can see just from some of these that it's not the science forces, right? We've got armed forces, things like that. And so kind of looking at how to narrow those things down. So if you are looking for certain types of materials, whether it's STEM or other things, one thing you could do is look at groups, and you can join groups, and there are a variety of groups. So Teaching Online with Primary Sources, I believe, is a fairly new group. It was just created in March of this year, and obviously we can find some fantastic resources in there. But I'm also part of a STEM group. And so that is one that I use frequently. But the benefit here are the albums. And so you can search for materials you're looking for. You can find whether it's an image, an album. There's a variety of resources. There are also discussions here, but I tend to be someone that is a little more, I'm in, I'm getting my business done, and I'm out. But the great thing is you can get notifications, right? So as you can see, I have 15 new notifications here. So I can easily scan my notifications even if I am not per se participating in discussions. I see when certain images have been added, links, their discussions pop up. So I can easily check my notifications and see if there's anything that I really am interested to know more about without having to heavily participate in some of those things. So my albums have gotten a little crazy, I have to say. So these are albums that I've liked and kind of followed to a certain extent. So you can share your albums. And I have several pages of albums. So Boise, teaching third grade in Boise, we talk about immigration and we talk about Boise past and present. And so you can see why I probably curated this album, but it wouldn't apply to many of us. So I'm going to go on to a couple other albums. So telephone innovation. Sometimes I create an album just to kind of house pieces, maybe primary sources that I like, but I'm not sure what to do with right now. And magnetism, we work with that. I'm going to go into playground design for a little bit because this one I actually did use with my students. And so I actually put a link at the bottom. When you scroll down to the bottom of your album, you can actually copy a shareable link where they don't have to sign in. So I posted this link in my students' Google Classroom. And with that link, they can go straight into the resources that I've compiled for them. So anything that I have added, whether it's newspaper articles, again, caution on the newspaper articles, because even if the article you are sharing is appropriate, you want to check the whole page. You know, our third graders and their tender little hearts, they're not all ready for some of the things that might be in the newspaper. And so we have to be careful and make sure if there's anything that we are showing, that we show it. And if we choose to show it, we show it and have some conversation about it. So do be careful about that. One of the other things that I have in here is a book, and it's an ebook that is actually on the Library of Congress. So I have a link to that. And because it is a different format, you can't necessarily see the preview of it like we did with the thumbnails on the other images. But then it can take us here, and these are open access books. So again, nice little elementary version. Students can read this. If they want, they could print it. It is in PDF format. And so it gives you a little idea. Now, obviously, this is a little easier than third grade reading material, but if it's something we're doing independently and comparing different things, it's a great resource to use. So, and then I can see different links by going through, but I'm going to go back to the overall album. So what I did with students is we actually looked at historical playgrounds. And it was interesting because we had one, let me see, it was just a dirt field. And they said, well, this isn't a playground. And I said, well, how do you know what is a playground? Tell me more. And so they were sure playgrounds had to have equipment. Well, so what they kind of learn is that not all, oh, there we go. And again, it could be a mislabel, right? The Library of Congress always has the caveat that, they label photos and other documents based on the information they have at the time. So it may or may not be accurate, but, an open area could have very well been a playground. The other image that was great, and there are blog posts about this image, is the May Day. And this one, I just have to click on because it's such a funny, well, it's not funny, but you can see there the students are really just, swinging around and running around. And when my students did a primary source analysis of this, they said, I just don't get this. They said, this isn't safe. It looks like they're just swinging around and running into each other, which is so funny coming from a third grader because, they'd love to try it in one way, but they're starting to get the idea of maybe why we have rules on playgrounds, maybe why playground equipment has changed over time. And so while we can't necessarily have them do extensive things, it is an opportunity to have them create their own playground. They might just sketch it and share it with you. They could talk about what rules they might need to have. So they could create it out of recyclables. Even in the classroom, students really brought in recyclables to create those. And so they have to be a little more creative. In some ways, this time can have a benefit because we don't have all the resources we did at school, whether it's the 3D printer or clay necessarily. But if they have some things at home, they're welcome to create their own playground based on the research they do. And so this is actually one that I really enjoyed. It gives you a little background. You can talk about why playgrounds are important. And some of the newspaper articles address that. So it talks about played in certain areas and the purpose. And if you can find, ebooks that you can use with your kiddos, we have an Epic subscription, and there's a great book on Epic that's available that talks about playgrounds, in the sense of why they're important for physical activity, health, those types of things, and the history of playgrounds. So if you have access to some of those resources, you may find a book that ties in really well with the playground idea. I'm going to go back to my albums really quickly and scroll through a couple more, because there is you can add so many things to this album that can make it its own lesson. So I am going to, and you'll see I have a lot of albums. So but the nice thing is you can create your own albums. You can find someone's album, and as I've done here, you can kind of bring it into your own. Now the challenge with that is when I go into someone else's album, I'm going to scroll down. So this one's on bridges. Again, this is something they could do. So you can still get your shareable link. And you can still share that with students. If you find that all the aspects are relevant for what you're wanting to do. And as a past, I used to teach K-5 engineering. Oops, well I forgot, I can't do that. Let's see if I can get back. I think I can, internet willing. So you can do some of these things and not have to, again, recreate the wheel. There are a lot of resources within this network that are ready to go. I did a fun one with first day of school. It'd be interesting to compare, what school looked like and what we're doing now. It's a very different time for many of our students. Geometry, this is a little beyond elementary, but I was working with a colleague that wanted to be able to integrate primary sources into her geometry class. But there are so many great, there's my Basque, looking for Basque items. There are so many great resources out there for bringing in math. I'm going to, let's see, simple machines, so levers. You can see there's a video as well as different types of wheelbarrows. So with this album, what I was really trying to accomplish was, looking at some of the simple machines and identifying how did the design vary based on what the wheelbarrow was carrying. And so you can see there's quite a variance in design. And I actually had students, again, recreate things. And I'm going to do this even though it's not the correct way to go. And I had students recreate wheelbarrows based on what they were going to carry or design their own wheelbarrows. And it was simply, you could use paper, you could use straws, you could use any of those. You can sketch it. I'm not going to go into this album, but this is a great album if you're looking for design. And I want to show you. There's just so many things. See, you get caught up and then you end up with all these albums, but they're all such great resources. And it's easy to create an album and then use what you need. So I want to go into the paper circuits and primary sources. I don't think students have what they need to create paper circuits, but it's an example that I want to share with you because of what it has in here. So it has the primary source resources, and then it actually, you can upload documents so that, we'll see what we get here. You're going to see all my downloads for today, but that's okay. And so this is actually, so it's a Word document pulled up into, it prints fine, but it's actually a format for creating a Christmas card that you can then use a primary source with, or a paper circuit with. And it's based on this image. I'm going to go back to my full album here so that I don't have to go one image at a time. But the other thing I added to this, if you are doing some type of hands-on project that you want to give guidance for, I have the paper circuit instructions, and then I simply created a quick video of how to do it. And I did this one through Animoto. Sorry about the music. I'll mute it for now. But so I'm showing the materials you need, making sure they have time, and then showing the steps, drawing the circuit out on the inside of the template, the Christmas card. But so some of these things are great. Now, Animoto is also a free video service. You can, if you haven't used that before, you can use still images to create a video. So it's a great way to kind of share resources and provide instructions in a quick way, because you can always pause your video if you're stuck on one. But you can add just a variety of resources to these albums to make them a complete lesson in themselves. Now, a majority of my albums are designed for me as an educator to have or to share with other educators, but it's definitely a possibility. I shared the playground album with my students, so you can target your albums to be for students. And then those shareable links go into anything, Microsoft Teams, Google Classrooms. I also use Seesaw. And so one thing I wanted to show you is the Seesaw app. Now this is also free. It may not be the right time to jump in, right? If your students don't have this information yet, but some of us may have found that the tools we were using in our classrooms, it's kind of paid off because our students already have the background knowledge and just need a little nudge. But in Seesaw, we can go into that. And so if I've created a shareable album, then I have all the resources I need to create a Seesaw lesson. And I'm going to go back to my albums for a moment. And while Seesaw is still loading. And I'm actually going to go home one more time, because there is something I want to show you once we get done with Seesaw. So I'm going to scroll back over to Seesaw here. And these are some of the things we've used. But if I go into activities, so Seesaw is again free. And I can add and assign an activity. Now this, again, this may not be useful to you if you are, you don't want to start a new application right now. But if it's something that you're already using, so I've pulled in my primary source and I've created a template that I can actually use. I can give a video along with my resources, but I am planning a math lesson based on the Rosa Parks recipe, because in the Library of Congress, they have a whole primary source collection of Rosa Parks materials from their exhibition they'd had. And one of the things that I love about the recipe is that we were just getting that solid foundation on fractions. So the recipe kind of brings back fractions and puts it in a practical use, as well as it actually gives them a working recipe. If they wanted to try this recipe later, they could try using the recipe to actually cook with. So a little bit of hands-on math. And what does the capital T mean compared to the lowercase t? So this is one that I'm really excited about using with my students. All right. So on our TPS Teachers Network homepage, again, these are some of the things that are, you know, have a lot of views, generating discussions. And so you may find something just with a quick glance there. Again, lots of likes. You have some ideas there. Get lost in a picture book. That I'm curious about that one. That's one I would check out for sure. And then again, this is lots of views, most discussed. So you'll find that some of these, you know, you have to look for the ones that are pertinent to what you are teaching. But then we have the TPS events calendar. And so they do such a great job here because they advertise a variety of professional development that is available online. And I know Keith and Kyle can probably speak to that more if they're interested, but you just have so much for you right here. So this becomes a resource as well as a way to create your own albums that you can share with students. And so your lessons can be generated almost directly within the TPS Teachers Network. I'm going to pause there for a moment and see, are there any questions? I cannot see the chat. Oops, wrong thing. When I pull up.
It's okay, we've been watching on there. I'm trying to think if there was any questions. Mostly just a lot of people sharing resources around what you're talking about.
Oh, fantastic.
People sharing resources, and Kyle's been diligently linking back to those albums you've been sharing. So because people are like, where was that? Where can I use that? All that kind of thing. So I think, but otherwise, I think we're in good shape.
Okay.
If not, people continue posting your questions, and we'll get to those as soon as we can.
All right, I'm going to jump back over to my slides just for a second here. So again, we were at TPS Teachers Network, and you know, I really fell in love with it. So it just became a great resource, both for me to collect items and then to share with my students in lessons. And I really feel like the network, the calendar, the professional development calendar is also really useful for finding resources to build those skills if you are interested in that. I am thinking that, you know, I just talked about the albums so much, and I want to make sure that, you know, if you have questions on any of these, you can, you know, reach out to me, let me know. But creating an album is simple. And so if you find an album you want to use, I'm going to go back to my albums. If I find an album that I want to use, but maybe I don't want to use the whole thing, so I'm going to go back into Amara's. Oh, let's go into, so these are some I followed. I'll go into space exploration and makerspace. And so maybe I just want one or two items. Again, with elementary, you know, it depends. If we're just doing a 15 to 30 minute lesson, we don't need a lot of images. But, you know, if I find images I want, I can click on those. So maybe I don't want to use this album exactly as it is, but I want parts of it. When I go here, I now have the link that I need to put it into an album for myself. So I can actually go up to albums and create an album and hope. And then this is where you have to, so I use the stem a lot for the stem items, but there are a variety of ways you can do it. And then I create my new album in that group. I give it a title. So space, oh, I'm going to make it a little different. Making space exploration to kind of connect. You can put a description in there. I usually know what I have, why I've created. And then you can see here, these are albums you can add to, but so if you're adding it to one of your existing albums, you can do that. And then collaborative is if you're working with a colleague on that, you can allow. And then I've actually, so remember I copied that link. I now have that link to the image that I wanted, and maybe I only want one or two. And then I now have that image in my album. So if you find an album you like, but there's just one or two you don't want, or maybe it's just a lot, I tend to put too many things in my album, you can then kind of create your own album taking pieces from that existing one. So you don't have to simply, use an album as it is. And sometimes, okay, this is one reason I have so many albums. Sometimes I create an album pulling all the resources I find that I may want to use, and then I'll create a second album that's actually for my students. So I limit what they have. Instead of my brainstorming album, I'll just post some of the items in there for them to use. And I'm going to go back into my albums one more time. So there's my new album. And remember, it came from Space Exploration and Makerspace. And I can add any of those items that I would like in there. Okay. So here you can see where I've given a little more information in some of mine, but the majority of my albums don't have any explanation. And again, this is just an odd collection of items, but I did want to show you, I know we're running out of time, but I wanted to show you one more album because one of the things, we're all nervous about certain things, right? With our students, are they going to be doing this? Are they going, I don't know. Maybe it's just me. I can't be a worrier. But so I worry, what are they actually going to be working on? And so one of the things that I love is that I actually created an album gathering resources from the Library of Congress for notebooks, because I want students to be writing. And the challenge with working with notebooks in third grade is a lot of the handwriting is cursive and it's not very neat. These people did not realize their notebooks were going to be in the Library of Congress for everyone to read, I'm pretty sure, or they might have been a little neater. I do have to say, Alexander Graham Bell had a lot of his typed. So that was one thing either he or the family did. They had the handwritten copies, and they also went back and typed some of theirs. So I'm going to go into notable notebooks while it's still loading, and we'll see how it all goes. But this is kind of a fun way to, again, encourage students to write. They say that students are going to be making primary sources about COVID-19 by journaling. And, this is one way we can talk about how, what we write can make a difference for later generations, because this is a historical time. And, they're part of that history. And so these are kind of just some of the notebooks. We've got some Carl Sagan notebooks, not exactly relevant for third grade, but the library has a variety of notebooks that you can use and pull things from. Alexander Graham Bell has some great kite demonstrations and drawings, and so I have used those with students as well to work on kites. And it is spring. If they have that ability to make kites from home, they could try some of Alexander Graham Bell's kites. He has all the drawings and things like that. They could test out different versions. But I feel like I've probably thrown enough at you for now. And I'm going to send it back to Keith unless there's questions for me.
Yeah, and I can kind of wrap it up as we're getting questions going here. Well, thanks, Kelly. That's just a a great way to walk you through, or walk us all through kind of your thought process using that album tool. It's as on the administrative team for the network, it was kind of interesting to get to see a user's perspective and how you've used it. And for all the rest of you out there who are either on the TPS Teachers Network or now inspired to go on there, probably your first follow on there should be Kelli, so you can see her her thoughts about putting these albums together and her teaching ideas. You spent a year out there at the library and had access to all that stuff and put so many wonderful collections together that it's amazing that we have the ability to kind of have access to your research and your thoughts. So great, thank you for sharing those with us. And we'll take a look at the questions. But I just want to remind everyone, and once again, if you're looking for a professional development certificate from a TPS Western Region, again, just go to that bit.ly link, bit.ly /PS teaching online, all strung together. I'm sure Kyle is posting up in the chat as I speak it. Just fill out that quick little form that comes up and reflect real quick and give us your contact information, and we'll get that out to you here as soon as we have as soon as we get the ability to do it. We've been a little packed getting all these things together at our office, but we'll get them out to you very soon. We'll grab the slide deck and get this all up onto the TPS Teachers Network and our YouTube channel. Probably tomorrow. We finally kind of got that process down. All the videos up until yesterday are now up on our YouTube channel. Just go to YouTube and search TPS Colorado, and they're up there. We'll also share those through all our channels here pretty soon, and we're going to try to get those all up as soon as we can, a day or two after the live event here in the evening. So yeah, thanks, Kelli. I also want to thank Kyle and Crystal for managing the chat room tonight. Hopefully they were able to share all those resources out for you. There's some wonderful chats and discussions and sharing of resources, so thank you guys. Just check one final time to see if there are any questions. Just a lot of thank yous to you, Kelli, for sharing everything. And thanks to all of you for attending tonight. I will leave this open for just a minute in case any questions come up, but with that, we'll pretty much just wrap it up.